We have the opportunity to talk a little bit about one of our favorite brands with which we've had some personal experience, but a guest who's had more experience than we have, Brian Scott, who farms in Indiana, the north central part of the state of Indiana, working with the folks at Mystik Lubricants. Brian, how are you?
Good, Max. How are you?
Just great. I'm thinking about the busy times ahead during the harvest season. You don't need any downtime. You've got to be going, and lubrication is an important part of that, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. There's plenty of grease points on the farm. Engine oil. I'm the combine guy, so whenever that 50-hour service goes off, I time at the end of the day or in the morning, go around and grease everything and make sure it's good to go.
You have used Mystik. I think of their tubes of grease, for example, that I purchase. It's reliable. There's a special use for some of those greases, as I understand.
Yeah, there's different kinds. I've been using a lot of it through planting. The planter's got 100 and some zerks on it, so going through it all the time. And I'm finding it lasts longer than like the cheap general purpose grease. And when I pump it out and it comes out the other end, it seems to be cleaner and not as broken down. So I'm liking what we see.
I was in a Mystik plant one time a few years ago, watching the oil being processed there before they put it into drums, before they put it in containers, and I noticed they sampled it every now and then. They pulled a sample to take it into their laboratory to check it to see that it was meeting their very rigid specifications. Obviously, they have very much in mind the way you use your product and how you rely upon it. It has to be there with great reliability.
Yeah, and it's almost like you don't want to have to think about your engine oil and all that. So, but you want something quality in there. And I take samples too when we do oil changes. So, get those, send them up to Fort Wayne to Blackstone, and they send them back. And my truck tells me to change oil about every 3,000. I'm doing it about every 10,000 from their reports. So you keep an eye on how that engine is performing by checking that oil sample that you pull. Yeah, and we've got on our equipment for the hours we run. I change it once a year, basically. On their extended oil changes, I could go longer, but that'd be 2 years use for some of us. So, like everybody said, cheap insurance. Go ahead and change it.
Now, you mentioned when you talked about it, grease points, and in some parts of the country they're called grease fittings, grease nipples. We always called them zerks.
Zerks. Yeah, that's what we call them. It's like field tile. When I get online, people don't know what's that. We don't have any of that, It's regional stuff.
The Zerk is named after a guy named Zerk. He worked for a company in Chicago. He's buried in southern Wisconsin, Mr. Zerk is. O.U. Zerk. In fact, there's a little article in my new book, More Stories from the Heartland, on Mr. Zerk. He immigrated from Austria, as I recall, into the United States and developed that grease fitting that would take grease in, but not let it come back out. But prior to that, it was a real problem of lubrication.
Yeah, so now we know the right name.
Pardon?
Now we know the right name.
Yes, absolutely. Great to visit with you, sir, and thank you for helping spread the good news about Mystik Lubricants.
Yeah, thank you.
And doing such a great job on the social media. Brian Scott, who farms in Carroll County, Indiana.